Welcome, Royalers. Come on in. Welcome to another great episode. I'm so excited about today's episode. I'm Lady TrenettWilson. I'm your lecturer and social historian, and today we're going to honor a great fashion designer that many people never even heard of. I call her the Black Chanel because the luxury of her products and what she made was absolutely beautiful. Her name is Anne Nicole Lowe, and she's the most famous unknown fashion designer in U.S. history. Let's jump right in. Now, Anne was born into a family of seamstresses. She was born in Clayton, Alabama on December the 14th, 1898, to Jane and Jack Lowe. She had one sister named Sally, and Sally remained a lifelong companion for her throughout her entire career. Anne's love for sewing and her attention to detail started as a child, as young as 5 or 6 years old, taking little scraps and making it into the flowers that would become her signature on all of her fashions. And look how detailed her work was. It was just absolutely beautiful. Her mother and grandmother, Georgia, they taught Anne how to sew exquisite pieces because they catered to the high end people of Alabama. And so they were sewing already for first ladies and high elite women in her community. But oddly, in 1910, she was married at only 12 years old to a tailor named Lee Cohen, and they had a son together named Arthur. Now, when she was 14, she decided to drop out of school, and it was because of the extreme racism, and she just had a beautiful skill, so she helped her mother and grandmother in the business. Now things stepped up when she turned 16 because at 16 her mother passed away, and she was right in the middle of a big job. So Anne stepped in when her mother passed away, and she completed the 4 dresses that her mother had started working on for a lady named Elizabeth Kirkman O'Neill. This job stretched Anne to her limits, but it gave her the confidence that she could do anything when it came to sewing. So shortly after that, she returned to Alabama and she began to sew and began to work. But another wealthy woman noticed her skills, and the woman was a wealthy woman from Tampa. Her husband was a fruit grower. Her name was Lady Josephine Lee, and she had a job offer. She noticed how immaculate that Anne's clothes were while shopping at a store Anne was at. She offered to hire her to sew her for her family and her 4 daughters in particular. Ooh, I'm getting color purple flashbacks. Except this story didn't end like that. Lowe and her husband, they were having problems, so she accepted the offer. And she packed her son Arthur and her up, and they moved to Tampa. And she started in the elevation of the fashion world. Her superior structure, adding the boning in her garments and the handmade flower details, made her the talk of the town. Lowe in an interview said it was the happiest time of her life. She showed for Lady Lee's 4 daughters, who I mentioned before, and they attended balls and events. And she sewed for all of Lady Lowe's actual friends. The society pages said that if you wore a Annie Cone dress, you were wearing a status symbol. Lady Lee believed in Anne's gifts so much that she paid the $1,500 for her to attend a school in New York called St. Taylor Design School. It was a top design school, and it was segregated. The French instructor did not believe Lowe had the money or the talent. She proved him wrong. Later on the Mike Douglas show, when she was interviewed, she said she wanted to prove that a Negro can become a major fashion designer. And that she did, because she only had to attend 6 months before the instructor said, "You're free to go. I can't teach you anything." That's how good she was. So in 1919, she married Caleb West. She had already divorced her first husband, and she was on and doing her thing. So she married Caleb West. She moved back to Alabama and was doing work there. And Caleb was a hotel bellman. And she opened up her first workroom behind their home. Her clothes did really well. And over the 10 years that she was there, she was able to reportedly save up $20,000 that allowed her to relocate to New York in 1928. That which she felt was the fashion mecca. And I just love this because here she was thinking on that level in 1928 to be her own entrepreneur. And so she and several of her helpers, she moved them with her to New York. And they rented a two-story studio on the West 46th Street. It didn't go too well. She was really not well known. And you know what? New York was more segregated and discriminatory than she thought it would be. And it was different than Alabama. It was more covert, but it was is really ingrained in the place and in the fashion industry. Well, Caleb was her husband, but he had had enough. I'm sure living with 5 or 6 women in a 2-bedroom apartment was not too fun. She moved on Manhattan Drive and they divorced. Now, despite Anne's really immense sewing talent, she never was able to save up that much money again because her negotiation skills and her money management skills were non existent. The rich women she was sewing for, they often negotiated her down to where she was doing the work really at cost. And she mentioned during an interview that she was a bit of a snob. She said that she only really sold for the higher upper echelon people. She didn't sew for social climbers and the cafe set. She only sold for the ones on the society pages. So she had, in my opinion, that maybe some of her payment in her mind was being in the presence of some of these high society and rich ladies, but she wasn't paid. And so the bottom line was, even though they were getting beautiful clothes from her, she wasn't making money. So she had to start doing spec work. And in her spec work, she sold for some of the nation's largest and most world renowned couture stores, if you will. Places like Saks Fifth Avenue. And look at this beautiful piece here that was sold at a garage sale. And Lowe's work. Can you imagine? She sold for Neiman Marcus, Henry Bendel's, and so many more. In 1946, she finally kind of stepped into the real notoriety when she sold Olivia de Havilland's dress when she accepted the Academy Award for Actress of the Year. However, the credit wasn't given to her, and she got tired of people stealing her credit. So she opened up a store and started her own label. The people flocked. She was sewing for everyone of high note. The Rockefellers, the Roosevelts, the DuPonts, the Bouviers, the Biddle family. And really, this actually sparked what became her most famous dress. She sold Jacqueline Kennedy's wedding dress when she married Robert F. Kennedy. And she also sold the bridesmaids' dresses. And an amazing story is it took her 4 months to make everything, and she had a flood 10 days before the wedding. So she remade everything and never told the family what happened. And can you imagine? She ate the cost on all of that. So she didn't make a dime out of that. And what's even worse, Jackie Kennedy did not give her credit. When asked about who made her dress, she said a Negro woman. So she didn't mention her name. So she really experienced some significant financial hardship. And in 1962, her store was taken by the IRS for unpaid taxes. Sadly, also in 1962, her son Arthur, he was killed in a car accident. She opened up another shop in 1968, but prior to that, she had been experiencing cataracts, and she actually lost one of her eyes because of it. So she opened up another store in 1968. She called it Lowe's Originals after having surgery. But the cataracts, they came back. And so the store was only open for about 4 years. And in 1972, Lowe retired. And Lowe, the fashion icon, the fashion great, she passed away on February 25th, 1981, in Queens after an extended illness. Before she passed, was able to attend one of those highfalutin events that no one ever invited her to, even though she sold for them, by the Junior League. So kudos to you, Junior League. I've done a lot of work with them in the past with the etiquette side. So thank you for inviting such a great woman. In her death, she is finally getting the recognition that really was due to her in her life. And a collection of her clothing is held at the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Institute of Art, and three are on display at the Smithsonian. There's so much more I could say about this woman. Her life was absolutely incredible. Her notoriety should have been on the level of a Chanel because her work was absolutely splendid. But she didn't have the backing, she didn't have the financial savvy, she didn't have a lot to get her where she needed to go. But what she did have was a gift given to her by God that no one could take away. And so you could see the beauty of her clothing still here today. I think it should be an Ann Lowe challenge on Project One Way. I think we should start a petition. That would be so great to see, so the younger generation can know who she is. Well, that's it. I want to thank you for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed the story about Ann Lowe and her amazing talent. Thank you for watching and also liking, sharing, and subscribing. We want to make you aware of all the wonderful royal, black, and elite people that are in our culture.